And we're on the second page of the exam 2 review. We're looking at number 4. We're asked to find the midpoint of the segment PQ. So we're given the 2 points. I'm going to go ahead and label these x1, y1, x2, y2. So we end up doing that every time we're working with points. So it's good to get comfortable with those labels. Now remember, midpoint is just going to be the point halfway in between the two that we're given. So my answer will be a point, so it is an ordered pair. I'm going to average my x's for the x coordinate and average my y's for the y coordinate. So notice you see only x's for the first point, only y's for the second. So if I go ahead and plug in those numbers, my x's are -8 and -2, so I want to add those together and divide by 2. The y's are going to be 6 and -3, so I'm going to add those together and divide by 2. So I end up with -10 over 2 and +3 over 2. So if I clean that up, my x coordinate is -5. My y coordinate, I can leave it as 3/2, or I can write it as 1.5 if I like that better. All right, so that would be the midpoint. All right, next we're moving on to some things about lines. So first we have slope. So remember, our formula for slope is the change in y over the change in x. So once again, we're seeing that x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to go ahead and label the second one while I'm here so I don't have to switch colors again. All right, so I want to subtract my y's. So I'm going to go -1 minus -8, and then I subtract the x's, so that'll be 2 minus 3. You can start with whichever point you want, but you have to start with the same point when you do the y's and when you do the x's. All right, so that'll be -1 plus 8. On the bottom, that will be -1, and I end up with 7 over -1, so that gives me a slope of -7. If I do the same thing for part B, I want the change in y over the change in x, or you may think of it as rise over run. That's going to be -4 minus a -4 over 7 minus a -5. So that's going to give me -4 plus 4 over 7 plus 5, and I get 0 over 12. Remember, it's okay to have a 0 in the numerator. It just makes the whole thing 0. All right, next we're asked to find the slope of the line. So what you want to do here is you want to solve for y. Okay, in this case, notice we have y's but no x's. We know that this is going to be a horizontal line. All right, so it's going to look something like this. If you think about the slope or the steepness of a horizontal line, you don't go up or down any, which means that your numerator is a 0. So your rise is a 0, and then it makes the whole thing 0. So if you were to find the slope, you would get something like maybe 0 over 3 or 0 over 5 or something like that. It makes the whole thing 0. Now if we look at B, this one is a vertical line. Okay, so if we graphed it, it would look something like this. So remember, on a vertical line, if you're trying to find the steepness, your left to right is none. So if I go from this point down to this point, I don't move to the left or right any. So I might get something like 3 over 0, but that bottom number is always going to be a 0, right? And for the horizontal, it's going to be the top number. We're not allowed to divide by 0, so we say that this slope is undefined. So all vertical lines have an undefined slope. All horizontal lines have a slope of 0. All right, so continuing with slope, we want to say whether the lines are parallel. Sorry, that's not what I meant to do. Parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So remember that parallel lines have the same steepness, so they are going to have the same slope. For perpendicular, they make 90-degree angles. So what happens is these are what we call negative reciprocals. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Okay, you may also think of them as opposite reciprocals. So if I look at part A, notice my first slope is a negative 2 over 3, and then my second slope is a positive 3 over 2. So not only are the signs different, but they are flipped over, so they are negative reciprocals. So for A, we would say that these lines are perpendicular. Now if I look at B, notice they are reciprocals, but they're both positive. I could think of 5 as 5 over 1. So it's a flip, but it's not opposite signs. So this one is going to be a neither. And then for our last one, we have a slope of 1/4 and a slope of 0.25. Well, we know that 1/4 is the same as 0.25, so these are actually the same thing. And if they are the same, then we know that those two lines are parallel. All right, now we're back to graphing lines again. We're going to graph a little differently. We're going to put the equation in slope-intercept form. So remember, that's y equals mx plus b. And then we should be able to graph it just from the slope and the y-intercept. So the first thing I have to do is solve for y. So I'm going to take this first equation, and I want to get y by itself, which means I want to move the x's to the other side. If I change sides, I change signs. So I get negative 2y equals negative 10x minus 8. Then I'm going to divide through by a negative 2. And I get y equals 5x plus 4. So remember, a negative over a negative cancels. All right, so what I have now is I have a slope. And you may want to think of that as a fraction, rise over run. And I have a y-intercept. All right, so if I want to graph the line, I'm going to start with the y-intercept. I know that it's 4 on the y-axis. And I'm going to go up 5 and right 1 from that point. So up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right 1. I can also do the opposite. I could go 5 down, but then instead of going right, I would have to go left. So I could go from here and go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and right 1. And that gives me another point. All right, so now I want to try to draw this. This will be really interesting because it's very, very steep. All right, that was not my best work ever. Maybe I should try that again. All right. You can use a straight edge on your test. It makes it a lot easier. I still miss. This is really hard to do on here. All right, that's as good as it's going to get. All right, so that would be my very steep straight line. All right, if I do the same thing for B, that's going to be 3y minus 12 equals negative 2x plus 6. Remember, I want y by itself, so I'm going to add 12 to both sides. Okay, I'm going to bring all that down to the bottom. I end up with 3y equals negative 2x plus 18. I'm going to divide everything by 3, and I get y equals negative 2/3 x plus 6. All right, so this is my slope. Notice it's negative, so I'm thinking down 2 for the negative, and then right 3 for the positive 3. And then this is going to be my y-intercept. All right, so if I go to graph that, my y-intercept is 6. I'm going to go down 2, right 3, and I can just keep doing that. Down 2, right 3, down 2, right 3. All right, so this is a nice method because you get a lot of points very quickly. All right, I'm going to try to draw this. All right, no, it's not too bad. All right, so draw your point that goes through, your line that goes through all those points, and then put your arrows on the end because remember that your line does keep going.